So this is what happened to me about 20 years ago. I've usually framed it as a dream, but it really didn't feel like a dream. It's just easier to say that for me, and it's sometimes easier for others to hear it that way. But I was in my bed at home in real life and I fell asleep and I woke in my dream in this subdued gray, like a metallic room, and I couldn't really see any edges. But there were three tables, metal tables in the room, and there was one woman already lying on a table. The center table I knew was for me, and there was no, I was to get on that. And then the other table next to that, there was a woman getting on the table. And off to the right of all the tables was a woman who I knew worked there. She belonged there. I knew that I had been there before. It was for a familiar process. I knew what I needed to do. I knew what was expected of me, but I did not belong there. I knew it was something that I would leave. And I went to the center table. I got on it. The moment I was supine, I whooshed right up into the air. And I realized I was above. Like, I realized I had been lying down, and then my um, uh, elevation changed. And so I was curious. I'm like, well, where am I now? Trying to kind of orient myself. And I looked down, and there was this thing on the table. I didn't recognize what it was. I didn't know that it was a body. I didn't know anything about it. But I noticed that it looked like a tube of toothpaste, is how I've explained it time and time again. It looked like a squeezed, empty shell of a toothpaste container or a deflated balloon. Now, when I whooshed into the air and was looking down at that thing, I had, it was as if you've had a head cold and your brain foggy, your brain's kind of sluggish, and then you take a decongestant and all of like half an hour later your head feels better, you feel clearer, you can just think a little bit better. That's what it was like when I went from lying down to above my body that I didn't know was my body at the time. I just felt clearer. And that it's a really hard sensation to describe. And but anyway, as I looked down, I began to recognize parts of this thing on the table, and like the clothing or the hair or something, and it took shape, and I was like, oh, that's me. Like, well, if that's me down there, why am I up here? How am I up here? And what do I look like now? And so I just lifted my left hand in front of my face because I wanted to see what I was. And that's when everything kind of changed again. It was, I, it's one of those times you wish you had a camera, some way to film that. But it take the early morning sunlight, like on a crystal clear day, and it's in autumn or late summer, or in the evening, like dusk, called golden hour, and then have a beam of light just shooting through trees, a beam coming down from the sky. And that is the color of my hand. Just this soft golden light. And it was transparent, completely transparent. Behind my hand was just like a black backdrop. And inside my hand were thousands, maybe millions, I don't know, couldn't count them, of like sparkly stars, just glittery, shiny. And I was just, I was so amazed. I'm like, this is me. Oh my gosh, I'm beautiful. Look how beautiful. And as I was thinking that, this voice off in the distance, it was a human voice. It was not angry, but it was like business, but it was very, very um uh humored by my reaction. And I hear it say, "Stop admiring yourself. You have a job to do." And the moment I was reminded of my job, I realized I was there for someone. And when I realized I was there for someone, my thought propelled me forward. I didn't have to think I need to go there, or I didn't need to walk or anything. I just moved. And it was like air just wisping, whooshing away so fast, so light. And I moved in the direction of my target, which was this woman. I flew over an office from bird's eye view, and I could see people working. And I saw one woman, I focused in on her, and she was just an office worker in a chair, kind of swiveling it back and forth. And she had a phone, in the crux or between her shoulder and her ear, and she was putting something in a filing cabinet. Neither here nor there, but it's just kind of like, what? And then I got, I thought about the woman again, and I went faster, and I could see her in the distance. Now, none of this had edges. Like, there were no walls anywhere. It was as if I was just flying above everything. There were no walls. And then I saw the woman at the bottom of a staircase, a stairwell. It was as if you took a stairwell from just your typical office and you plopped it down in the center of a room. No walls, just the staircase. And she was at the bottom of that staircase. And she was older. I'd say probably, in her 70s, maybe early 80s. Older than I am now, for sure. And definitely older than I was 20 plus years ago. And I knew I had to get her to climb those stairs. I don't know why, but I had to get her to climb those stairs. And she couldn't see me. And I know, excuse me, I knew she couldn't see me. But I could sense her, and I could feel the terror, the fear. She didn't want to climb those stairs. She didn't know what had happened, I guess, to her. She just was confused and fearful. And I could send her emotion, and I could send her support, and that's what I did. And she could feel that. She could sense that. And so I kind of hovered by her, and I kept kind of thinking, you can do it. Keep going, keep moving, one step at a time. Move on, keep climbing, that type of thing. And I sent her encouragement, and I kept feeling her fear, but I did not become afraid. And I focused on that when I analyzed it later, because that just seems really interesting to me. Because usually, sometimes if someone else is afraid, you might get afraid too, because you're like, oh, do I need to be, fearful of something? But no, I didn't become afraid. I just felt her fear. I knew she was afraid. And so in the dream, in the experience, it took a long time for me to get her to climb those stairs. I don't know. Time was weird there. I don't even know how to explain time there. And finally, when she got to the top of the stairs, oh, another phenomenal moment. It just opened up to this edge-free expanse of beautiful, crisp white, not bright, because bright, like, kind of, I've said that before, that it was bright, but bright means like you have to kind of close your eyes from the sun or something like that. No, this was just white light, and it was everywhere. It was infused in everything. It was kind of like a cloud floor, sort of. And there were no edges, but off in the distance there was a bridge, like an arched bridge. You might see it in a little garden or some sort of backyard. It wasn't built by, a big corporation where cars can go over it. It was just a footbridge, a little arched wooden footbridge, not intricate. And I knew she had to cross that bridge, right? I mean, cross the bridge. But that was the symbolism. That was what I knew had to happen. And um, I need to back up a bit because I forgot to say this part. Um, and I don't want to edit it. But when I saw my hand, this is really important. I don't know why I didn't say this. But when I saw my hand and when I was admiring myself and when I heard this voice, only when I heard this voice, this was another shift in consciousness or clarity. And I was home. Like I felt relieved to be home. And I knew that this voice, whatever it was, whoever it was, wherever it was, it accepted me 100%. It knew every dumb thing I'd ever done, every mean thing I'd ever thought. It knew everything. And it didn't matter. It didn't matter. It loved me, every single part of me. And that felt so good. But I needed to get that in because it felt so natural. Like this was just where it wasn't even later. I'll explain in my analysis of it more about what I realized about that moment. But anyway, to move forward now, I needed to get her across the bridge. And once she went across the bridge and I saw her finally step forward on it, I was pulled backwards, sucked backwards like in a straw. Because I think it kind of felt tight and fast. And what shocked me at the time and through analysis later is I didn't will that. I didn't think that something else beyond my control, something else forced that to happen. Because I would not have wanted to leave that place. But it sucked me backwards. And I'm going to save the next part when that happened after I was sucked backwards for the next video because it's even harder or just, it's a new level of strangeness as I look back on it. And it's the part that made this not a dream. So if you made it this far, yay, thank you. If you have an experience like this, please, I welcome you to share it. That's what this is about. I yearn to find people who experience this because I don't know why. I didn't meditate for this. I had 2 little kids at the time. I didn't have time to try to go out of body or any of this. I didn't even know really that could be done. I knew about near-death experiences, but I don't think that's what this was. So anyway, thank you for joining me. I hope it was interesting, if nothing else. But I hope you come back for the next video for what happened next. Thanks. Have a great day.